Good day and welcome to today's webinar, Improve Safety with Data Visualization. I'm Evan Lockridge, a consultant to Help Incorporated. Help Incorporated is the nonprofit provider of PrePass services, including way station bypass and electronic toll payment services. Today, we'll be talking about data visualization and showing you Inform, a data visualization tool from PrePass. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping notes. We have muted all lines, so if you have a question, type it into the questions box located in the webinar panel. We will answer questions at the end of the presentation. Also, at the end of the webinar, you'll receive a quick survey. Please take a few moments to provide your feedback. At this time, I'd like to welcome our presenter, Drew Anderson. Drew brings over 25 years of experience combining regulatory compliance and technology. In his current role, he's responsible for key account management, and he's also the product manager for Informed Data Tools. Welcome, Drew.
Thank you very much, Evan, for the kind introduction. I would like to welcome everybody to the webinar. As you notice, the title of this webinar is Improving Safety with Data Visualization, but we're going to reverse the order a little bit and talk first about visualization and why it's important, and a little history. So if I can get my slides to transfer, there we go. We're going to, after we get through the data visualization piece, we're going to jump into examples using visualization tools as they relate to motor carrier safety. And at the end of the approximately 45 minutes, hopefully you'll come away with 2 or 3 things you didn't have before, and it will be time well spent. So good visualization tools, what they do is they tell a story. For all the talk about data that we have in the industry, what we're really trying to do at the end of the day, if we really think about it, when we sit down at our desk, is we want to tell a story. And we want to tell that story around safety to what I term internal and external stakeholders, right? My customers. And this becomes really important given that we have so much data out there. It's almost information overload. So what do we mean when we talk about data visualization? The bottom line, as you see on this interesting little visual here, is that we are, in fact, visual creatures, right? Our culture is visual. Everything that we do, TV, movies, signs, art, the internet, video games, it's all visual, and our eyes are drawn to colors and patterns. And this is really evident in the environment in which we operate in our industry. I mean, we see safety orange out there, right? Stop sign red, which, a little interesting note, I come to find out the official title of stop sign red is Boston University red. So you can file that away and impress your friends with that. Highway signs are green with white lettering to improve visibility, especially at night. So the examples of how we use visuals are all over the place, right? When we see a chart, we are able to quickly see trends and patterns that we would not be able to see through using text. And we're able to understand and internalize the data. And as it says on this graph, 90% of the information that comes into us and we process is through data visualization. All right. So if you search any dictionary, you'll not find the term data visualization per se, but as I mentioned earlier, you can use the internet, do a Google search, and it'll provide you all kinds of information relative to data visualization. This, call it a topic, if you will, has really exploded over the last, I'll say, 10 years or so. And the definition that you can glean is data visualization is a form of communication that represents data using graphics for improved decision making, right? As opposed to trying to process a bunch of text to make that decision. Visual elements like charts and graphs and maps provide an accessible way to see and understand trends, outliers, if you will, and patterns in the data. Again, not only to help you quickly make decisions, but I think particularly in our business, communicate that information to the people who need it, right? Because it's only the information is only valuable if we can share it with people and then they can make decisions. So in today's world, visualization tools and technologies really are becoming essential to analyze all of the data that we've got. But it did not start in the computer age or with Google or any of the internets. Just a little history here. The gentleman on the screen, William Playfair, was from Scotland. He was an inventor and an economist who really came up with the first set of line charts and bar charts. And he was tasked with drawing up patents, which required him to develop his drafting and image skills. And he became convinced he could use his ability to illustrate to make data sort of pop. And in sort of the first famous chart, he plotted out the price of wheat in the United Kingdom. I'm not sure if it was United Kingdom back then, but whatever it was called back then, against the cost of labor. So the price of wheat against the cost of labor, because the commoners were complaining that the high cost of wheat was thought to be driving wages up. And in fact, that wasn't true. Wages were rising much more slowly than the cost of wheat itself. So he published his first book called The Commercial and Political Atlas back in 1786, and it had 43 graphs and charts and plots and bar charts to describe the connections between the products and the pricing. So his definition, which I really like, says that data visualization produces form and shape to a number of separate ideas, which are otherwise abstract and unconnected. And I think this idea really holds true today, and probably even more relevant given the fact that data has just exploded, as we are all aware. So understanding the data, and we picked the title of this slide particularly because the issue is not a lack of data. I've been talking to motor carriers about safety and data really for the last 12 years in this industry. And I've never heard anybody say, I don't have enough data. The issue is I have too much data and I can't really process it all. And so having too much data without the dedicated resources available, and we don't have, unlimited resources sitting around where we can hire just a bunch of data analysts to process this stuff. So it makes it difficult to make sense of it all. So having the right data and the ability to quickly create the story that supports what you're trying to tell, right? In the area of safety, and if you sort of think safety today is sort of synonymous in many ways, not entirely, but in many ways with CSA, and that's all about driver behavior. And today, and I still talk to carriers, and the process hasn't changed all that much. Folks are downloading all of their safety data, typically from Compass or SMS, and then they mash it all together into spreadsheets, and they fire up pivot tables, or maybe they have some business intelligence tools or third-party software, but it's still a rather arduous process. And you're trying to find these needles in the haystack, and it's difficult to know where to even start. The process is time consuming. It's subject to a lot of errors. And you must re-download the data on a periodic basis, right? So SMS is updated monthly, as we all know. And so you start the process all over again. Now I realize that there are folks who are fortunate, who do have resources, and boy, that's awesome. But not everybody is in that position. And ultimately, by understanding the data, the goal is, as it relates to safety, and what we're talking about today is to communicate an easy message, particularly to drivers, to help them understand what kind of behaviors we really want them to focus on. All right, so in order to modify that behavior, we use this data to improve safety. And the first thing we need to do is identify where the problems are. And I like to look at this in a very old school way. It can get rather complicated. There's a lot of sophistication out there, and when I find myself struggling to even figure out where to start with all of this stuff, I go back to the basics: who, what, when, where, and why. And if I just literally write those questions out, that gives me my starting point to try to figure out, okay, um, where are these issues happening? Who's having the most difficulty? When are they occurring? All right. And what message can I communicate to my internal and external customers? Be that a driver, and typically we focus on drivers, but it can also be folks um, at the executive level. It could be external folks. We have a lot of people who like to communicate safety data to their insurance agents and underwriters because it helps them improve their safety profile from that perspective. So data visualization allows you to find the trends, whether it's with things going on at a particular inspection facility along a certain route. And if I see these trends going on along a particular route, maybe I can focus my message just on the drivers along that freight lane. Maybe it's a dedicated route that I'm having issues with. So if I've got 100 drivers in my fleet, maybe I don't need to bring everybody in over some period of time and try to force feed, if you will, this message, when I can take my 20 drivers that are just running this lane and give them a very focused message on tires, lights, and brakes, or this particular violation that seems to be the focus of this particular inspection facility. All right. So once the scope of the problem is identified, we can target the remedy. All right. There's lots of examples on how this can be done. We have a larger carrier, Swift Transportation, was able to identify very high incidence of inspections at the banding scales. And it turned out many of these were occurring with new drivers because they were unfamiliar with what was going on at that particular scale, and what that particular scale has a propensity to focus on vehicle maintenance. So the traffic at that scale house, and I can show you this a little bit later in the presentation, can get backed up. All right. And if it gets backed up out on the highway, drivers were inadvertently bypassing the site. And some of them were actually getting ticketed for failure to obey a traffic control device. So we don't want that to happen. That's a fairly high point violation as it relates to CSA. So what they did is they created a safety video that was targeted specifically to new drivers in that location coming out of that particular terminal, because that's where the problem was. And they were able to reduce the inspections and violations I should say, by 20% at that location. So it really helps target the message. And with that sort of historical look and perspective on data visualization, what I want to do now is switch gears real fast and jump into an example of how motor carriers can use a data visualization tool to achieve some of the results that we just looked at. So I am going to pop over real quick to my PrePass login, and what we're going to do is log in to a tool that PrePass launched about a year or so ago called Inform. And every PrePass customer has the ability to get access to Inform. So when you log into Inform, what you're going to see initially is what's called the company snapshot. This is just a high-level view of the data that you see if you log into Compass or SMS. We just put it in a format that makes it a little more easier to view. This is the beginning of the story that we're telling. And in the case of Informed Safety, what we're trying to focus on is your ISS score, because that is the primary driver of your ability to bypass or not. And we want to help you keep bypassing, right? It benefits you and it benefits us, right? So We want to help keep that score down, and this tool is designed really specifically to do that. So when I look at my ISS score, what goes into that primarily is my CSA basics. So I just see my CSA basic percentile rankings restated here in this chart. I also have a 24-month top trending items pie chart over here on the right. And then as I scroll down, I see a monthly trend line, and I can start to create visualizations that show me patterns and trends. All right. So we show the ISS score by default. That's the red line. If I click on the CSA basic tab here, it overlays all of my percentile rankings for the last 24 months. And I can toggle these off and on. So if I don't want to see driver fitness or controlled maintenance, crash, let's turn off hours of service. And what I see is a trend. All right, so my ISS is in red, and you can see that sort of bounced up and down over time. But as I move my cursor, I start to see the correlation between the scores and my percentile rankings in these two, hazmat and unsafe. So the visualization tells me as these sort of move up and down, my ISS moves up and down. So I've got a direct correlation, and that's a starting point for my story on what I can really focus on to help keep my driver behavior focused on those things that are going to help reduce my CSA scores and ultimately help reduce my ISS score. So from there, I pop over to my data insights, and let's try that again. And this is not what I was expecting to see. So let's try my data insights. All right. So again, I apologize for the hiccups. Again, your production site will be live and fully functional. I promise you that. So when we look at your data insight, so now we're beginning to take the story down a level. And what we see initially is the map of the United States, and it defaults over here on the left-hand side for the past 2 years worth of data. It defaults to all violations, but I can select any type of violation or inspection I like, all the way down to clean inspections or crashes. I can select a specific CSA basic category if I want to, or I can look at it by state. So if I want to change the view, and right now just all violations, I can see the map visually tells me that my hot spots are in Arizona and in Tennessee, with a smattering of activity going on in Georgia, Kentucky, California. So let's just for fun take vehicle maintenance and run that query. Well, interestingly enough, now my map changes dramatically. So I can see my vehicle maintenance issues are now centered over in New Mexico, Arizona, and California. All right. If I want to change this to, let's close out vehicle maintenance and just look at all vehicle violations and run that query, now I get some more activity in Tennessee and Kentucky. So let's continue to drill down. So the system itself is telling me where these needles in the haystack are. So I don't have to, I'm not downloading any data. The data is already populated in the system for you. All I need to do is follow the visual cues, and it's going to tell me where to look. So in this case, I'm looking at the last 2 years for all vehicle violations. Now I'm in the state of Kentucky. And as I zoom in on Kentucky, I can start to see a county view of what's going on. And as I get a little more granular, my view now is going to change to include a couple of new visualizations. And as I center the screen here, you'll see a couple of items. One are these blue push pins. The blue pins indicate the geographic center of a county. So if the inspection data does not include enough specifics to pinpoint it on the map, we'll roll it back up to the county. But in the case of the red and orange pins, what these are actual scales, all right? So I can see that by clicking on there, this red pin indicates the Simpson County Way facility. So this tells me visually that in Kentucky, just at a quick glance, my hotspot is Simpson County. So what's going on in Simpson County? Where's the information that I can communicate along with these visuals, right? And it's all right here in the details. So I just click on my details tab over here, and I immediately go to the details that is driving the visualization. And all of these columns are the information directly from the inspection report. And I can sort any one of these columns alphabetically, ascending or descending. I think what's more interesting, at least from my perspective, is I can drag and drop a column header. And let's take the site, right? So we saw Simpson County. So if I just grab my site column header, plop it into this gray bar, my data is automatically, literally with a click of a mouse, sorted by Kentucky, by way facility for the last 2 years. All right, so it's very simple to see exactly what's going on. If I want to add another layer, I can do that as well. So I know I've got vehicle violations here. Let's take my description of that violation. So now my data is sorted by site first, all right? And then my second sort is the violation description. So if I go down here, here's my Simpson County Way facility, and I can see in this case vehicle violations, all right? So I can see just right off the top, I've got brake issues, and I've got tire issues, and I've got lamp issues, all right? Tires, lights, and brakes. Maybe no surprise there. That's usual, the usual combination when it comes to vehicle violations. But now I can see specifically at this scale what's going on, all right? This allows me to communicate to a group of drivers specifically what they need to focus on, all right, or what's going on relative to that particular freight lane. All right, and it's very valuable information. And we've got a lot of carriers who are using this system right now, using the data that you're looking at on the screen now behind the scenes that's driving the visualization in conjunction with the visualization itself to show them exactly what's going on. And let me show you another quick example or two of those visualizations. And I'll use another tool that we've got. We looked at states and counties and down to the way facilities, but I've got another view I can pick up on, which is my highway view. So I have, I shouldn't say we have mapped all the interstate highways in the US. And if I want to select, let's just say, let's go to I-65 and see what pops up, because I know that sort of runs through Tennessee and Kentucky. So there's I-65. I've set it to all violations. I could also pick all inspections if I wanted to. And if I run that query, now I've got a new set of visualizations on the screen. So Inform maps out Interstate 65, and that's the blue line here, right? So behind the scenes, I can go and just pull the details for every inspection that has happened along Interstate 65. Another visualization that you see on the screen here is when these inspections have happened in a particular county along the highway, we highlight that county as well. And then you also see the push pins appear as well. So now I've got a very rich dynamic view of what's going on along this freight lane. And this is very impactful if I'm bringing in a subset of drivers who have routes along here. This is something that I can communicate to them that they can take away, that they don't have to take notes on. They don't have to really try to remember stuff, because the visualization helps them remember that very clearly. All right. I'll go back and do one more highway view, only because we referred to the banning scales earlier, and that's always interesting to look at. And the banning scales is also known as the Desert Hills Inspection Facility. And if anybody on the phone runs I-10 through California, they are probably very familiar with that inspection facility. And so in this case, this motor carrier doesn't have a lot of vehicle miles traveled along I-10, but they do, as we saw earlier in the vehicle maintenance, have some maintenance issues in New Mexico, Arizona, and California. Now we start to see that visually on the map. As I look at I-10, I see the counties where these inspections are occurring. And my favorite little facility here, if I click on this, yes, it is the Desert Hills Inspection Facility. All right. And so when I zoom into this, I can see a little more clearly what's going on. And the story that we related about one of our carriers who was having issues with new drivers simply bypassing the scale because the traffic was out on the highway, that is a real issue. And this is one of the training tools that they used, right? So I can switch to satellite mode. And when I switch to my satellite mode and zoom in, and I'm trying not to do it too quickly so the screen doesn't get all crazy on you. This is Google Maps, which we've licensed all the Google Maps technology for you. And when I look at this banning scale or the Desert Hills Inspection Facility, I see exactly what those new drivers were facing. We didn't make this picture up. I couldn't have drawn this any better. This just happens to be the real Google Earth image of the Desert Hills Inspection Facility, and you can see exactly what those drivers were facing. This is the line of traffic, and hopefully you can see that on your screen, of trucks literally going out onto the highway trying to get into this scale. And if I'm a new driver and I want to be safe, you know what I'm going to do? I might make the decision to just keep moving because, quite frankly, that's the safer decision, right? And so this is the core of what Inform is designed to do, to give you the information. And quite frankly, if I can make a little bit of a plug for PrePass, this is why bypassing came into existence in the first place, all right? The concept of bypassing commercial motor vehicles is really not a commercial adventure, right? It is a public-private partnership. It is an idea that came to fruition through many years, several years ago, of law enforcement and the motor carrier industry identifying a real problem on the highway, particularly at scales. And the fact that this type of event, traffic backing up, was occurring across the country, both sides, enforcement and the industry, got together and said, all right, how can we help solve this problem, right? And the reason they were able to come up with a solution, which is bypassing and PrePass, was because they both have the same motive, and that motive is safety. As much as we like to sometimes poke at law enforcement, right, for writing me up for this or that or whatever the case may be, right, their mission is really much the same mission that I see on the homepage of many of our customers, and that is highway safety. I can go to a lot of websites for motor carriers, and one of the messages on that website is, we are a safe operator, and they take great pride in that, and they put that out front, as they should. Law enforcement has the exact same mission. They want safer highways. So in the case of Desert Hills, it's not that inspectors simply, have nothing better to do and they just want to annoy you and take your time. What you got to understand, where this inspection facility is along Interstate 10, right? People are going to be coming in and out of the desert. And if I'm an inspector, I don't want faulty tires, exposed fabric, or somebody with an air leak heading out over to Phoenix, right? On a blacktop that's God knows how hot. So we all have the same mission, which is safety. And hopefully, after looking at some of the tools that we've got to provide to carriers, and understanding the importance and the value and the impact of visualization, it gives you a little bit better sense of how you can communicate messages to your internal and external customers, and tell your story. Because at the end of the day, when I come into my job and I sit down at my desk, if I really think about it, if I strip away all the noise and really think about what is my motive today, what I really want to do is tell a story. And I want to be able to communicate to my higher ups and the people that report to me and my peers laterally across the organization, all of those stakeholders. I want to communicate to them that, I got it handled. I'm on it, and there aren't going to be any surprises today, hopefully. With that, I'm going to toss it back and see if Evan has any questions that have come from the audience. Evan?
Thank you very much, Drew. Well, at this time, we can answer your questions. If you have a question, type it into the questions box. You'll find that on the webinar panel. Now, if we do not get to all of the questions, do not worry. We will respond to you directly with the email you provided at registration. So go ahead and type any questions in you may have. Now, while we wait to get to those, I'd like to mention that PrePass has an ongoing blog and podcast focusing on the latest trucking industry topics. You can find these on the PrePass website at prepass.com. Just look under the resources tab. Let's get to our first question. And first one, Drew, how will the proposed Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration rewrite of the CSA program impact Inform?
Woo, that's a good question right out of the box. So there's sort of really two parts to that. The first is the rewrite itself, which, if anybody has been paying attention to that, where they're at right now is running further pilots or tests on test data, just really to see how this whole thing is going to come together using this incident or item response theory, I believe it is, IRT model. That testing, the next big test is supposed to occur in April of next year, I believe it is. If you read the FMCSA response, they've left themselves a lot of wiggle room in this rewrite. And they said early on in their document that this is likely going to require multiple iterations of testing. In addition, the National Academy of Sciences, the folks who did the study and recommended this IRT model for adoption, they suggested that as part of this, motor carriers submit data to the FMCSA, such as pay and turnover rates and such, and the industry is having a little bit of an issue. So I would, and this is my opinion only, I don't speak for any company or whatever, but my opinion is that it's a little bit of be careful what you ask for, you just may get it.
Right.
Because this is going to be very complicated. So the second part of that is, how is that going to impact Inform? And obviously, if these changes do come to pass, we are our relationship and our position as a nonprofit, and our relationship with the FMCSA and the states allow us, due to our credentialing, we use a lot of data, right, to help people continue to bypass. And we don't just let anybody bypass. You have to pass certain credentialing. So that data will continue to flow. And we don't anticipate any hiccups, but probably like everybody out there, Evan, we're going to be watching this very closely and update it accordingly.
Okay, let me get to another question. Someone wants to know when PrePass is going to include Idaho, Oregon, and Washington State in Inform?
Well, so I think I'm going to interpret that question.
Please.
So the question as you read it is, when are they going to be included in Inform? And they are already included, because Inform is really it's a safety tool, right? And the source of the data is not magical. It's really from, well, we get it from a sort of a different route, but it's available on SMS. It's MICMAS data, right? So it's the same data that motor carriers can download from Compass Portal. So inspection and violation data is included in all states. There's no states that would not be included in theirs. If an inspection occurs, it's recorded and we report on it. Now, how I'm going to interpret the question is, when are we going to be able to bypass in those states? Because that has been an ongoing issue, which I am happy to say has been resolved. We now work with the NORPASS system in Oregon Greenlight, and you can contact us at the number or the email that's on the screen. And there is a very simple form to fill out. We submit that to Oregon and/or Washington, and you will be bypassing in those states. So I'm glad that question came up.
All right, let's go to the next question. How much does Inform cost?
So Inform costs, the cost is zero. So there's no additional cost. I always hesitate to use the word free. That's why I sort of stumbled there, because free implies like there's no value to it, and I like to avoid that. But there's no additional cost, and there's a method to that, because we want to help our customers keep bypassing. And if you keep bypassing, you'll continue to use the service, and we want people to use the service. The more bypassing, the safer the highway. So it's really a win-win-win. And so it is a value add to your current subscription.
And let's see, one other question here. How does someone sign up for Inform?
Very simple. You can email, if you know your sales rep or account manager, you can contact them directly. You can call the 800 number on the screen, or send an email to sales@prepass.com. It is super simple to get signed up. All we need really is your contact information of yourself or those folks in your organization that you want to have access to Inform. Your DOT number or numbers. So if you've got multiple DOTs, that's fine. Whether it's 1 or 10, it doesn't matter to us. You can have access to them all. And then give us a 1 or 2 business days max, and you'll have your login. You'll get an email. We will ask you to set up your password, and you are on your way. So that's literally all there is to it.
All right, Drew Anderson, he is the Director of Carrier Relations for Help Incorporated's PrePass. Drew, thank you so much for the valuable information.
Thanks, Evan. I appreciate it.
All right, and that does it for this webinar. Please do not forget to complete the short survey you will see in just a moment on your screen at the conclusion. I'm Evan Lockridge, and I want to thank you for joining us, and have yourself a great day.